Title: The House on Maple Street. It was a crisp autumn evening when Rachel and her friends, Emma and Mark, decided to drive to the outskirts of town for a little adventure. They had heard rumors about the old house at the end of Maple Street, a dilapidated structure that had been abandoned for decades. People said strange things happened there, but no one had dared to go inside for as long as anyone could remember. "Are we really doing this?" Emma asked, looking nervous. She sat in the back seat of Mark's car, twirling a strand of her hair. Mark, always the brave one, grinned from the driver's seat. "Of course we are. It's just an old house. What could happen?" Rachel didn't say much, but her curiosity gnawed at her. The thought of the creepy old house fascinated her. It had always been a topic of whispered conversations in school and around town. And tonight, it was the perfect opportunity to explore it. When they reached Maple Street, the house loomed in the distance like a shadow in the dying light. It was bigger than Rachel remembered, the outline of its dark windows staring down at them like empty eyes. "This place gives me the creeps," Emma whispered as they stepped out of the car, the wind howling around them. Rachel felt a chill in the air, but she shrugged it off. "It's just a house. Let's go." They walked up the overgrown path toward the front porch, where the door hung on one hinge, barely holding on. Mark pushed it open, and a sharp creak echoed through the night. The inside was dark and musty, with furniture covered in dusty sheets. The smell of mildew and rot filled the air. "This is definitely haunted," Emma muttered, but she followed anyway. Rachel felt a thrill run through her as she stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking under her feet. It was quiet, too quiet. As she wandered deeper into the house, she noticed the wallpaper peeling away in long strips, revealing cracks in the walls. The atmosphere was oppressive, like the house was watching them. Mark was the first to speak, his voice hushed. "Let's see if we can find the basement. That's where the real creepy stuff is." They descended into the darkness, the flashlight in Mark's hand illuminating their path. The air grew colder as they reached the bottom. The basement was far more oppressive than the rest of the house, its stone walls thick and damp. And there was something else in the air, something wrong. A presence. It lingered just out of sight, like a shadow that refused to fade. "I don't like this," Emma said, her voice trembling. "I think we should go back upstairs." Rachel felt a sudden unease wash over her. Her heartbeat quickened as she looked around, the light from the flashlight flickering. Something in the corner of the basement caught her eye, a large, old trunk that hadn't been there before. Mark walked over and knelt beside it. "What do you think's inside?" Rachel's stomach tightened, a sense of dread creeping up her spine. She didn't want to know. But Mark, ever the curious one, opened the trunk with a loud scrape. Inside, there was nothing but dust, cobwebs, and an old, cracked mirror. "That's it?" Rachel asked, her voice tight. But Mark reached into the trunk and pulled the mirror out. It was heavy, the glass warped with age. As soon as he held it up to his face, a loud thud echoed through the basement. They all froze. The noise sounded like footsteps, but they were coming from above them, slow, deliberate steps. Rachel's blood ran cold. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. But no one answered. Emma and Mark were staring at the stairs, eyes wide with fear. The footsteps grew louder, closer. It was unmistakable now, a slow, deliberate step followed by another. Suddenly, the basement light flickered, then went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Mark cursed under his breath and fumbled for his phone to use its flashlight. Just as the light flickered back to life, Rachel saw something in the corner of the room, a figure, barely visible, but unmistakably there. It was a tall, thin silhouette, standing unnaturally still. Her heart pounded as she whispered, "Do you see that?" Mark looked at her, his face drained of color. "No one else is here." "There's no one else in the house." Emma gasped. "It's not, no. It's not real." Rachel couldn't take her eyes off the figure. The flashlight flickered again, and when it came back on, the figure was gone. The house felt alive, its dark corners full of hidden eyes, watching their every move. "We need to leave," Rachel said, her voice barely a whisper. She turned to run toward the stairs, but as she did, the mirror Mark was holding slipped from his hand, crashing to the ground with a deafening smash. They all froze, the air thick with the sound of something scratching against the walls, something angry, something desperate. Rachel turned back, her eyes scanning the room. That's when she saw it, the reflection in the shattered pieces of the mirror. In the glass, there were faces. Hundreds of them. Ghostly, distorted faces staring back at her, their mouths open in silent screams. Before she could scream, the figure reappeared. This time, it was closer. Its eyes were black pits, and its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, revealing jagged teeth. "Run!" Mark screamed. They bolted up the stairs, the house seeming to shift and groan around them. The front door slammed shut before they could reach it. Desperately, they ran through the house, searching for another exit. But the walls seemed to close in on them, and the floor beneath their feet seemed to shift with every step. Rachel turned one last time, and there it was again, the figure in the hallway, standing in front of the only other door. Its black eyes locked with hers. She reached out for Emma and Mark, but as she did, the house seemed to consume the air around them. The walls groaned, the floor cracked, and in that moment, Rachel understood, it wasn't just haunted by ghosts. It was the house itself. As the figure stepped forward, Rachel's scream echoed through the darkness, swallowed by the house's endless hunger. The next morning, when the police arrived, there was no sign of Rachel, Emma, or Mark. Only the old house on Maple Street stood, silent and abandoned, its dark windows staring back at them. And inside, the air was thick with the weight of something long forgotten. Hope that gave you a good chill. Let me know if you want more.